Man, I don't know if I have been more excited about an unscripted moment than with none other than Pastor Randy Bezet. Woo!
Can you hear it?
I can hear the crowd. They're just
all
just
three of
surrounded.
them.
The gallery.
They're going wild.
The gallery, that's it. You just made a big putt. You just sank a big putt in the unscripted series here. But man, thanks a lot for joining me.
I'm glad to be on here, Dino. I've watched so many of them. I've always thought what a great podcast it is. So to be on it today.
Well, we've known each other for about 25 years. And you planted Bayside 22 years ago.
Exactly.
And so can you believe that 22 years ago, you and Amy? And what a great church. I spoke there recently.
You were celebrating our birthday.
I celebrated the birthday.
That's right.
You were over celebrating a birthday with one of our church planters.
Exactly.
So it's kind of cool.
We were just doing the party swap kind of thing. Yeah.
Party swap. Which you know a little bit about party swap back in the day.
That's right.
And
it's a different kind of party swap.
So just to give the people watching a little context, I knew your brother before I knew you. So I've known Rick for a long time.
Because y'all were doing youth ministry at the same time.
Doing youth ministry together. Yeah. And then I met Pastor Chris. I met Chris. And then out of that, I met you.
Right.
And then we have a common friend in one of our dear spiritual fathers, Billy Hornsby, who's with the Lord.
For sure.
And then, so it was funny because I knew Rick, and we did, get youth ministry, and he'd come preach for me at Crossfire. I'd preach for him at Hearts of Fire. Hearts of Fire. Everything was a fire.
Yeah, back in the days.
If you didn't have fire, you were weak.
Bethany was the church and had a dove.
Yeah, of course.
And then you have fire.
At Brother Swagger's, we had a dove and a cross. So we had both things. So we did all these things in Louisiana. So I moved to Louisiana, married a Central girl.
Bro.
You from Louisiana.
And your Central girl was neighbors with my wife.
That's it.
They grew up in the same neighborhood.
A lot of relationship, a lot of family. But then I got to meet you. You were serving, I think, at a church, maybe in the Tampa area. And then I remember somebody telling me, man, Randy's going to plant a church. And tell me about the early moment of wanting to plant a church.
Whew, man, this is a story. We could spend a whole podcast together, and I don't think it's necessary to do that. But there's some things in here that I think it'd be good to talk about since we're talking about leadership. I was at Bethany, grew up there, and then I was sent out by them, and I was an executive pastor of a church in Tampa. And you hear stories about cray-cray in church.
Yeah.
This was the craziest church I've ever been a part of. And I don't mean crazy like their expressions of worship and stuff. I'm talking about how unhealthy the leadership was there. Just let me tell you, you would think I was lying if I told all the stories. And I was there. But I knew that God told me to go to Florida. Like we left everything we knew.
Sure.
And we get there and we're like, God, how is this what you told me to go to?
Right.
This is Florida's a great place to live, and it was terrible. So then, as I was serving there, that's when my brother and Chris then left Bethany.
Yep.
And they started the church.
Ark started,
right. A year after I left Baton Rouge and went to Tampa, the next year they started.
Yeah.
And I saw their launch, and I went, man, I feel like that's something I want to do now.
Yeah.
And up to that point, I never wanted to be the lead pastor of a church because I couldn't be a Larry Stockstill or one of those guys. But Rick and Chris, Art, we learned how to do church like you do in youth ministry, make it relevant. And that's a whole nother topic about how do we do that now. But and I thought, okay, I can do that. And then at church said, okay, you can go plant a church and figure out where you want to go. But what I learned is that God used that church in Tampa to get me where I was supposed to be.
Of course.
And then we started praying around, and I opened up a map with the U.S. because you can go playing anywhere, especially back then. Because
the runway was open.
Yeah. So I went and I looked in Southern California. I love the weather like that, and but I didn't connect with my heart. I looked in Alabama because Chris was there. We've been friends since high school. And then I looked in Northwest Arkansas because my brother was there as well. Right. And the Lord told me, Randy, don't go somewhere because somebody else is there. What if God calls them away? I want you to go somewhere that you love. And if you love the place, then you'll love the people. So I knew that it wasn't Arkansas, and I knew it wasn't Alabama. And I really liked Florida, so I was driving around, and God gave me the spot to go, and then I moved. And we moved in July. This was way before Art knew what we were doing.
We have a little different timeline these days.
July, we had our first service September 8th.
Yeah.
We were there for 2 months.
Yeah.
Our worship
60
leader.
days, let's go.
Our worship leader came from your church.
Yes,
he was a
did.
youth worship leader. And
He
came.
just got his driver's license, baby.
Right, he was 18 years old.
I know.
And
I think you called me and you were like, hey, man, I got an idea. And I think I was like, yeah, man, Jordan Becknell.
Yeah.
I was like, man, he's great. He'd been leading for us in youth, even had started leading on Sunday. So it's interesting how he was being developed as a young man.
He was.
And then we, of course, said yes. And we were given to ARC as a church and wanted to be a part, wanted to support.
Well, you definitely helped.
And
you helped me with his salary for a whole year.
I think I need to remind him of that.
You think about it, like to you, your church, not that money's insignificant, but I think you gave like $700 a month. And that's not a whole lot of money, but it was huge.
Oh, yeah.
That little bit of seed was really big seed for us.
Sure.
And don't ever discredit that. I think about, well, I'm not giving them that much, but that's a big deal.
It is.
No matter what you do.
When you are starting out, you need everything.
Everything.
And that's what I love about ARC. I mean, we're not only the training, the resources, but the relationship, the connection. You do a lot of that in Florida. It's a heart. I mean, you literally. You're so relational. You have a related network. I mean, you do relationship in everything. So, and that's the name of your podcast,
Relational Leader Podcast.
Hello. And so you've been that way. You are that way, and I think that is key. But I want to say this, man. Being at your church, I've spoke there probably 10 times in the last 22 years. I remember being there maybe year 2 or 3.
It was pitiful. Don't talk about that.
And you were in maybe the middle. It was a smaller school.
It was an elementary school.
I remember it was small. And I remember thinking, wow, these are short ceilings. I mean, this little baby.
It was like 12-foot
baby
ceilings.
toilets. I mean, it was little.
Oh, yeah, little kid chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember being there, but excited. You and Amy love people. You were raising up leaders. And then to be there recently, and I want to say this. You know what I love? You have all kinds of people. I stood in the foyer for 3 services. When I got done preaching, I went to that foyer.
Right, you working hard.
And I went to work.
I owe you something.
you good. And so, but I just shook hands with all kinds of people, young, old, people that are raised in Florida, people that have moved into Florida, every type of skin color, every type of economic. You could tell the different dynamics of a person's family, single moms, blended families, families with a lot of kids, grandparents. I mean, Bayside is a place for all kinds of people. Mm-hmm. How have you been intentional about that?
Well, I mean, I think it's changed over the years. I think post-COVID church, is a whole new paradigm you have to be looking at.
A lot of new people.
Lots of new people. But what are people looking for now? I think they're still looking for a friendly church. But I actually don't think people want a friendly church. They want a friend.
Yeah.
I just saw some research, and we talked about this in our church, as it's so important, but the Surgeon General just came out with this in January, and this is the worst stat regarding loneliness and depression in the history of America. 50% of adults feel lonely and isolated. They're not alone, they just feel lonely and isolated, and they define loneliness as not having any meaningful relationships or a sense of belonging. 50% of people. And they even went so much to see if connectivity helped with community. 46% of the people they surveyed said social media fosters artificial relationships.
100%.
So that means people are looking for it. And we, the church, I mean, it's so easy to.
Well, what I loved about you have a discipleship process, you have a pathway, you have steps, know God, then I love to find a family. And always find freedom, and then discover purpose.
Yeah.
I think those were your 4 things. And I'm working for you.
Bro.
And so, but that second one.
You know that better than most of my staff. I got an opening right now.
But that's a little outreach pastor. I'll come out and give out some bottled water, try to reach some folks.
That's how you got saved, baby.
Find a family. And it's the same here. And you and I get to go to great churches. I mean, there's some great churches right now. Amazing. All size, all different places. And that community, a friend, sense of belonging. As a church leader, how important is it that you foster and you live an example to create that with people? So why is that important to you? How have you seen it work? And how can you help church leaders, pastors, planters to understand, and you got to love people, and you got to work hard making sure they feel belonged, that they belong.
That's a great question. I'm glad we're talking about it because I got all kind of things running through my brain. First of all, you can't ask people that you can't preach a message for people to do something and you're not doing it.
Right.
So if you don't have real, authentic community as a pastor, as a leader, well, you could preach really great sermons, but you're multiplying what you are, not what you say.
Sure.
So we got to have that. And too many pastors are alone and feel like they don't have somebody. So once again, they can have a bunch of people around them.
Yeah.
But do they really know who you are? You know, that love must be sincere, kind of a thing that Paul says in Romans. So anyway, so you have to have that. And then we have to create environments for people to have that. And okay, so how do we do it? That's the $1 million question right now. Because it's harder than ever to get people to go from a Sunday seat in the pew to someone's house. In fact, if you think about it, how many people in the church that you're at Highlands, okay, how many people, I hope they're not listening, because I don't mean to insult people in my church or your church
or churches.
Churches in general. But how many of those people's house do you want to go and hang out with?
Yeah.
If you're afraid to go do that.
It's an odd dynamic.
And if you're afraid to do it, how hard is it for us to get the people out there to go to someone's house? There's a small group meeting and that's a chasm I think is too wide. Okay, so we have been in this experiment of actually making the church more communal, even on the weekend.
Okay,
everybody does small groups, but I'm not gonna die on the hill of small groups. What I am gonna die on the hill of is community.
Yeah, with the small group, the result.
That's just a vehicle that we use to help them have community.
Right.
But I think it's hard to get people to go from the church to a small group on Sunday with somebody they don't really know. So we just recently tried this, and it all of a sudden, the community is popping. Okay, so we did a whole series for 4 weeks on community, and we at the service we would take time and we would put questions on there and find somebody you don't know. We take 3 to 5 minutes before I would preach or
during the message,
and sometimes in my message. I would be teaching about the importance of relationships, and what people have done for me, and how many of you have been through a situation and someone did something for you? How did that change your life? Find somebody you don't know. And people are texting me in the church and emailing and like, I can't thank you for doing this. I didn't know I needed it. We're hanging out now after service and praying and encouraging one another. And it's like all of a sudden the community feel in our church has gone out the roof. And so that's helped tremendously. And now we're doing, half of our groups now are all at the church.
Yeah, at the church, and
it's just...
We find that here, even at Highlands, and I'll see this, I was at a church in Wichita Falls, Texas, and they were, they're building a church. So they're young, they're only 4 or 5 years old, but they're really working hard, not giving up on the idea of we've got to find community and help people do it. So they're using their building. They give some suggestions on how you could create that, whether it's out or in an activity or in other places. And it's the effort, I think, that God honors, even in small contexts, even in a smaller church. Well, sometimes in a smaller church, it's easier to find it.
For sure.
But, so those things are super important. One of the things, Randy, and I've always noticed this about you and Amy's life, you've always been a good sending church. You've sent out some guys to plant churches. You've deposited leaders in other churches. You have a heart for kingdom. I mean, you help pastors. You're one of the leaders in ARC, so you're always encouraging church planters. You help shape those kind of things. So how has it been for you? Because sometimes it can get very selfish. Man, it's my people. I'm the leader. I want them all right here with me. But you've lived your life with an open hand. And you've got some guys that have been with you that are pastoring some dynamic churches right now, and you've released them. You're a sending church. How have you processed that in your own heart? Well, if I lose this leader, then it just seems like you've done well with that.
Well, first of all, you have to realize, and if you pastor in a church, it doesn't take you long to realize this. It takes you long to get comfortable in it, have faith and trust in it. People are gonna leave. And in fact, Amy and I were, she was just crying the other day because some really dear friends of ours. It's hard when you're a pastor's wife to find people that don't need anything from you. And they'll just text you and say, I love you, and thinking about you today.
Yeah.
And like there's no pretense. And anyway, and they're leaving, and she's crying, it's so hard to find those kind of friends. So, because so many people leave, that's just what happens in church. They move, they get angry, it could be whatever.
Or even good things.
Even good things, like you sending them out. Yeah.
Or they've relocated to
God gave them a promotion. And it just, the point is that they leave. And you have to learn how to deal with that. And so what you learn after some seasons of doing this is the church is not built on a person, but is built on the person of Jesus Christ. And there have been staff members over the years that I thought, they leave. There's no way. It could actually be just somebody in the church. It could be a giver, a fabulous leader, or a volunteer. And you think, ooh, man, without their giving, we're not going to make it, or without their serving, or without their staff, their leadership. And I have found that what happens on the back end of that is actually even better. There are no vacuums in the kingdom of God.
That's good.
And that's hard to learn. So, because that is going to happen, and I can't do anything about it, I've had to learn what should I do. So first of all, they're not my people. They're God's people. And God sends them, and my job is to steward them. It's kind of like raising kids. They're only mine for a season. My job is to empower them and to help them live the purpose and calling that God has given them. So I'm going to invest in them. Some people might be with me for a lifetime. Jordan and Kristen. I mean, I love it, and I think they're lifers, and I love them with all my heart. But some people don't. And you have to just be okay with that and realize when they do leave, God backfills it, and it's even better. So what I've decided to do, especially with being a sending church, as you said, is to try to be generous, because I didn't make it on my own. I mentioned earlier, you help financially, you helped Jordan's salary for a whole year. We would have never made it without that. So freely I have received. I just think you ought to freely give.
Yeah, I think it grows your heart as a leader. One of the things, I was talking to a friend of mine recently, one of our friends, and it's like, I don't want my heart to get smaller as I get older.
Right.
I don't want the mileage of ministry of people, of hurt, or whatever, to all of a sudden make my heart smaller. You want to try to live you want your heart to grow.
So what's the antidote to that, though?
I think generosity.
Exactly.
I think being generous, I think being noticing, I think being aware, I think not being self-centered, trying to not think about yourself all the time, which is hard for all of us.
For sure.
To think about others, to put yourself in their shoes. Hey, what you said, remember where I was, what I need. Remember what somebody did that hurt me. So I think in leadership, you said something about this being, when you're at that church in Tampa, you learn, these experiences we go through, we learn a lot of what to do, but then we learn a lot of what I'm not going to do. I don't think I'm going to be about that. If we had an unhealthy experience, I don't think I'm going that route. I think I'm going to say it like this. I'm going to operate like this. And because I'm not going to quit because I had a bad experience. We live in a world today because of church hurt, because somebody has a bad experience. Well, I'm just quitting and I'm just giving up. Jacob was with Laban for 14 years. That wasn't, you talk about church hurt. Brother got hurt. Laban messed that man up. You know what he did? But God used Laban, and that's not to say that tough situations you're supposed to stay in all the time.
No.
But God used Laban to shape Jacob to be what he needed to be as a patriarch. And I think you go through what you said. God used all that to prep you to be a leader, to learn what to do and to learn what not to do.
To be a sending, generous person, you have to trust that God is your source and not people.
Good too.
I've learned this, and a lot of times we get it wrong, right? We trust people and love God. And what we should do is trust God and love people.
You've heard it here on Unscripted. That's fantastic.
And we don't always do that. But here's the thing. Here's why this is so important. Our lives are shaped by most difficult moments in our life. In other words, if I were to ask you or anyone, what are your values of your life, that these are like the hills you're going to die on, and you tell me what they are, and I had to ask you where they came from, probably one of the darkest moments in your life. You went through something and you're like, I'm never doing that again, or I'm going to do it just like that. And we create these values that we live by. But you have to go through those moments to have those values where you say, oh, now I can trust in God for that, not people. Trust in God because he's my source. So I'll be generous and I'll pastor people even though these sheep will probably bite me one day. That's not my responsibility. I just trust God and I'll just love people.
Well, and you've done a good job of this because you see it in your preaching, you see it in your mannerisms when you hang out. People, I mean, you're a great communicator. You're great on stage, but you're great at the restaurant. You're great, hanging out in the car. You've been able to keep your joy. I mean, you've been able to keep your joy,
right,
and to still laugh. And you've got a great family. I sat with your family when I was there that weekend, and we sat after services and had lunch and just laughed. For 45 minutes, we told stories and laughed. And I had your daughter-in-laws laughing, and we were, Jordan was cracking, and Dylan and Connor, we were all just messing with each other. And then I was watching your boys go at each other, they were making fun of each other. And, and you've kept that laughter, you've kept that joy. How have you done that with, the world that we live in, full of stress and hate and a lot of people on edge around us?
Yeah.
In a world and a country that lives on edge. How have you kept your joy for ministry, love for people? Have you not gotten cynical?
It's a battle.
Yeah.
It is. It really, honestly, it is a battle because there's sometimes it's like, man, I could be making a lot of money doing something else a lot easier. And but you have to go back to that moment where God called you. And if you don't, you quit. You have to go back to that burning bush experience because it gets hard sometimes. And so a lot of times too, when people are certain ways to you, you kind of get caught up in things like you use Jacob and Laban. Well, Jacob was a deceiver too.
Yeah. And
so sometimes you might be reaping some things that you've sown.
God was purging that brother.
So, I can't other people did this. Well, you did some stupid stuff too. So, so it's good to put things in perspective, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And Amy and I have learned that she's really the one that's taught me this the most, is that when I get a little cynical or I'm down or I'm hurt by people or critical or, things aren't looking as rose-colored, she just spends more time in the foyer with people. And honestly, the more you spend time with people, you get a different perspective and you realize my life is really not that bad, So I've learned that from her, and I just try to hang out in the foyer a lot. And some people say all the time, hey, pastors don't hang out in the foyer anymore. I think that's the most ridiculous.
I don't know those people.
I don't know those people either.
Everywhere I go, we're hanging out with people.
In the foyer,
I preach out. I get the opportunity to speak like you do, and every church I'm at, you're with people because that's what you're called to do. And I enjoy it. I'm a people person. So I've had people say, well, Dino, you're a people person. But there's still times you got to be like, okay, you can have a bad day. You can have things going on in your family. You can have things going on in your finances. You can have things going on in your physical body that you don't feel. But I think joy is a choice. I think it's intentional. I think it's a decision you make. I think loving people is a choice. It's a decision. You're intentional about those things.
I'm laughing. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at what you said and how ridiculous, if you think about it. Dino, you're a people person. We're not talking about personalities. We're talking about a calling to pastor people.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what your personality is.
Exactly. Somebody said we were trying to get everybody, some of our team, to go greet some people. And the guy said, man, I'm an introvert. I don't do greeting. I said, well, no, we all do greeting. We do greeting.
Being a dentist and say, I don't like teeth. Well, you picked the wrong thing.
Yeah, I'm a mechanic. I'm scared of cars.
You better pick another job.
That is trouble. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to the episode of Unscripted. We just want to take a moment to express our gratitude to Golf Companies for making this episode possible. Golf Companies specializes in church construction with a heart for ministry. Since their founding, they've had the privilege of helping congregations create spaces that inspire worship, foster community, and support ministry growth. From new construction to renovations, they bring decades of expertise, innovation, and passion for quality to every project they undertake. Whether you're dreaming of a new sanctuary, expanding your facilities, or enhancing your church campus, They're here to guide you every step of the way. Make sure to visit golfcompanies.com to learn more about how you can partner together to bring your vision to life and access resources designed specifically for churches. Let's build something extraordinary together. What do you think about, you planted a church 22 years ago. We have a lot of church planters that watch this, Randy, and of course we love ARC. We're here at ARC shooting this, and you've been a part of ARC. You planted church number what?
5.
No, number 5, and so we're about 1,130 churches. So since you planted, there's been 1,125 churches, and your church gives financially. You give your time. You're a model church. You create other environments for pastors to connect, to be healthy, and all these. You have a heart for New England, which is super important with church planting right now.
Yeah, it's huge.
And pastors up there with some of your team there. And so 22 years later, what would you tell a young church planter? What worked when you started that works now?
Well, I was hoping this would somehow bring me back to this point because I didn't get to talk about it earlier, but I think it's important. I was in that church in Tampa for 2 years, and I told you how bad it was. And while I was there, I like to play golf. And so some days are better than others. But you know how golf is.
All your golf days are good. All of mine are bad.
It's all relative, man. It's all relative. But so at the country club where I played golf when I was there, I would invite people to church, but then they wouldn't come back because it was, it was
rough.
Anyway. So then I started a Bible study there, and the pastor knew about it.
Yeah.
So I had like 20 people come to this men's Bible study we were just kind of just hanging out with them. All right, well, when I left that church, I was going to plant a church. They were begging for me to come to this suburb of Tampa, and it was 20 families. They were like, yeah, that's a great launch without ever even saying one word to anybody. Like, that'd be a good place to go start. So I went and had a meeting with all these families, and man, they were ready to go. And this pastor found out about it, and he called me and he said, Randy, I don't want you to go up there because we're going to move the church up there. Well, he was so full of stuff I can't even talk about on the podcast.
It's unscripted.
It's unscripted. Yeah, we're going to leave that part unscripted.
Yeah.
Right? And he couldn't, he wasn't going to do it. He couldn't do it. There was no way. But he said, I don't want you to go up there. And I thought about it. Like, this guy owed me money. Like, it was, I had, from a moral standpoint, ethical standpoint, you owe me money, you're a liar.
You had a reason to do your thing.
I'm going up there. It was 45 minutes from where the church was. And but he said he didn't want me to go. And I made a decision that I wouldn't have had those relationships without him anyway.
True.
So even though that guy was dishonorable,
yeah,
I chose to do the honorable thing.
Right.
And I went down. I'm in Sarasota now. And he blessed that. And I'm glad I did. My point is that if you're a church planter, a potential church planter, you're thinking about going to plant a church, you're on staff somewhere and you want to go plant, and you want to go, I think you need to go with the blessing of who you're with.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't. But as Paul says,
and
as far as it depends on you,
that's a good word.
Live at peace. So as long as you've done everything that you can,
sure.
I don't think you should go without the blessing.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did.
And that still works.
It does work. Well, because the DNA of, when something is birthed, the DNA is set.
Yeah.
You never can change it.
Yeah, yeah.
When you birth that church, if it's from a split in any way, that DNA is in there.
Or you got a bad spirit.
You better.
You're trying to win. You're trying to prove
Are you taking
something.
all these offended people and you put that in the DNA? Ooh, you're going to regret it.
It never gets up off the ground.
It does. It's so unhealthy, and you don't want to do that. That still works today.
Yeah.
As much as it ever has.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, I don't know. I think I really do love asking my team this, and it's changed obviously over the years from church planting to now. But I always ask them, what are you dreaming about? As leaders, especially a lead pastor, you're trying to gather people because you need them to help you. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're building the church.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, come on, I need you to do this.
We're laying bricks. Let's go.
But what if you were to ask them what their dreams were?
That's good.
And then you start helping them live their dreams. I guarantee you it'll reciprocate. And look, I find in my emails living the dream. And it's not because I'm pursuing my dreams. I've been trying to help other people live their dreams for 22 years now. And I mean, my life is really good. God has been good.
He has. You know, one of the things I know about you, and I think we both have tried to pursue this, and you know, friendship's important.
Very.
You got a great brother. You've been friends with Pastor Chris forever. Got Larry Stockstill in your life. You've got a group of friends, you know, Fry, Payne, TJ. I mean, you got some guys in your life that you've had in your life. I mean, Greg Surratt. All of our lives are better because of Greg Surratt.
It wouldn't be who we are without him.
Siebling, Champion, the Hawes, Herbert Cooper, Keller. I mean, we could name Mullins. I mean, you've been blessed with some good friends, but you've showed yourself friendly. How important as a pastor, because I think we talked a little about loneliness, but I think I'll talk to people and they're just waiting on someone to be friendly to them. They're waiting on someone to mentor them. They're waiting on someone to provide them cover and lead them. And it's like, it really doesn't work that way. You have to reciprocate and you have to value. And, you know, I feel like I have some good friends, but I've had to make that a priority.
You had to mind for that stuff.
As in they make me a priority. Talk to us a little bit about that and how that's kept you.
Yeah,
And
it's
created
so
a cover
important to
for
have
you.
those kind of friends. We all want them. And I hear people all the time, it actually is better than it used to be as I'm sitting here taking the temperature of what I'm about to say. But I feel like as far as the ARC is concerned, this seems to be a whole lot better. In other words, you and the team here at ARC have done an incredible job of fostering that people look at our lives and they go, man, I want a relationship like Randy and Dino have, or you do Chris, and like what you guys have. And what they don't know is this goes back 25, 30 years ago more.
Yeah.
And we have been in a lot of moments together where we stood back to back. Say, I got your back, you got my back, let's get through this together.
Yep.
And you gotta have history with people. And so I know it doesn't matter if you're in Mozambique or if you're in Florida or if you're in Alabama, if somebody says something to Dino, he got my back and I got his. Doesn't mean you won't call me and correct me, but I know like we got a brotherhood. It takes time
it takes a long time.
and experience, meaning experiences to go through those things. And we have been through those and we've made it a priority that this relationship is gonna stand the test of time. And other people see that and they want it. And what they have to realize is you have to get close enough to people to have experiences, lead with trust. You verify, lead with trust so that you can have these kind of relationships. And I hear in the ARC, it used to be 5, 8 years ago, that people are like, oh, man, how do we get that? And you guys have done a great job of helping creating experiences all over the country for people to develop that.
As you know this, because you lead pastors, you do your best. You do everything you can to create those environments, those atmospheres, that intentionality. I was at an event recently, and I had about 22 guys come in that were all churches under 500, and Randy, they're my heroes. They planted during COVID. Most of them planted during COVID. There were a few other outliers that didn't, but the majority of that group had planted in the middle of it all. And again, I just sat there and I'm just clapping. I'm championing. I have so much respect and so much honor for these guys. But my big challenge to them was, hey, get each other's number, text each other, get to know each other before you leave here, follow up on this. It wasn't just happenstance that we were here together. If God orders the steps of the righteous, we were meant to be here for 2 days. So make the most of this moment.
Right. You
could have just met your new best friend. You could have just met the person that's going to be there for you when things are bad. I mean, you've stood with me during tough times. I've called you before, said, man, I need your help. I need you to believe in me. I need you for my family. We've had that relationship, and because you can think about yourself a lot. I mean, in this world right now, you think a lot about yourself.
You have to have those kind of people. And so in order to have a friend, you got to be a friend. And people want spiritual fathers, but they're not really good spiritual sons or daughters. And so to have a father, you got to be a good child. And I think it goes both ways. To have a friend, you got to be a friend. And I just don't think knowing somebody, getting in a connection with them, you got to be willing to go beyond that. And the hardest thing to do, it is for me. Maybe you've figured out on others, but managing relationships, it is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier. I spent my entire morning catching up on text messages and emails.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work just to maintain relationships.
It is.
But it's always worth it.
Yeah, you being it, which you just did it. You were intentional this morning, so I need to follow up on some people. I think I'm the same way. There's sometimes I'll look and be like, wow, I haven't communicated back. I've not been a good friend. Or you see somebody go through something, you're like, wow, I wasn't there for them. So you just do your best to circle back. I circled back with a person today. I missed their birthday. And I circled back on it. I hated that I missed their birthday.
Well, you don't ever miss a birthday.
I did on this brother. It was a good friend.
I don't believe it.
And I just let him know, man, I was a day late. But I said, man, I saw it. And when I saw it, I was doing something. But the heart is there, and it's good. Let me. I want to wrap up with this, because you've got so many things. I mean, the leadership that you're teaching. You spend a lot of time with pastors. I've got two other things I want to go over. Number one, what are you encouraging pastors about right now? What are you telling them? What's your encouragement? I know
my encouragement right now is it's this community thing that I think you got to work real hard on your churches, because we just saw a stat that shows how desperate people are in that. And I think we have to all figure out how to create weekend services that are not goofy, but I'm telling you, people need the supernatural move of God.
Yeah.
And I just am trying to leave space for that in our weekend services.
You feel that in your services.
Whether you walk up, I don't know. I felt like this morning that, somebody in here is depressed, or I don't know what it is. And just giving people a word and praying for people and opening the altars and prayer and ministry.
Leaning in.
When you were at Bayside for the birthday celebration, I got a report from one of our campuses, and their last service, which they do 3 there, they never even took the message.
God was moving.
The power of God fell so hard. The whole worship team, they were all laying on the platform. People were weeping and crying. And you just leave room for that.
Yeah.
And I think if we just let God know if you want to do that today, don't make it goofy. Lord knows, we don't need to go back to that. I've been in some
You don't orchestrate it.
Because I remember growing up in church, that was weird. And you bring somebody and go, man, I hope Sister so-and-so doesn't do her twirly bird thing. They're going to leave for sure. I ain't saying that we need to get into that goofy stuff, but for the presence of God, real and authentic, that's what I think pastors need.
It's interesting. Everywhere I'm going, that's happening. Everywhere I go, small churches, older churches, young churches, everybody that you see right now is letting their services breathe. What's God saying? What's God doing? Is there something now? Thank God for where we're headed. We got a target today. We're teaching on this. We're going to do this. But you see that, and which leads me to the second thought is you do have a voices out there that continue to, they talk a lot about everything that's wrong with the church.
Well, yeah.
And it's just, that God's not called me to that. I think there are some amazing things. You hear about revival on college campuses right now. I was just talking to a missionary that was in northern India, which is one of the hard places of the world.
Yes, it is.
Where God was moving in a small pocket. And you have families that are getting baptized, and the sacrifice that they make when they make that decision is huge.
It's massive.
And you see God moving around the world. You've spent time all over the world. You guys do stuff all over the world through missions. And there's some cool things happening. What do you see that's happening that you're like, man, I love what I'm seeing? Is it generations? Because I know your younger generation movement at your church is crazy, incredible. What do you see happening?
Well, it's 2 things right now that I'm the most excited about when it comes to the capital C church. One is the empowerment of the next generation. And I'm telling you, our school of worship, there's a lot of great places to go, so don't misunderstand me. But we are raising up the most worship leaders.
Wow.
I don't even have places for them. The thing about it is they're young. They're 22 years old.
Yeah.
But, man, Dino, they're awesome.
I know.
They're some of the best worship leaders, and I don't have platforms for them. I don't have enough space for them, and I'm not doing this for me. And so we're sending them out to churches.
Man, that's good to know.
I'm enjoying empowering the next generation. And at Bayside College, we are killing it in that area.
Yeah.
So I'm
and
really
you'll
excited.
build a structure soon.
Yeah,
I saw some property there. It looks like there was a sign that
like
was like
40
the future
acres.
home of Bayside College.
For sure. So
That's cool.
Yeah. So I am excited. There's a lot to that. But the power in the next generation, Dino, I love it. And the second thing is what God is doing in Europe, primarily in the UK, but really all over Europe. Like I go to the art
conference.
Heart for
that.
Well, all right. I think geopolitically that Europe is very important to America. And
wow.
I mean, it really is. Those are our primary allies in the world that keep peace, And so, but the church over there is in bad spot. However, the same thing that the ark was. I think back to our days, Dino. Yeah. We're going to talk about this offline over next couple moments or days when we're together. I'd love to. But anyway, what God is doing over there is what the ark in America, what it was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
16 years ago. Like there's about 12 phenomenal, dynamic leaders in all kinds of different countries that have really been able to create like some Antioch churches. Some model churches. Yeah. Bro, it is poised. The problem is they need a partner church from America to partner with them. And we did this with the kind of a lead church of all of this. It's in Ireland. At Lighthouse Church there. And we've been partnering with him now for like 5 years. And we planted 5 churches all over Europe and in turn, or in Ireland and also in other places in Europe. And the reason why they need that, is because financially it costs a lot more than it does in India. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But their tax rate is 40%, 42%. You ask people to tithe 50% of their income. And that's just hard when you have a non-Christian whole culture that you're trying to raise up. So when we go partner with them and help them, that's how the church is going this way. It's the best thing going right now in the church world. I think it is, and I'm excited about it.
This last conference that you were a part of, man, it just one thing after another. We just did one in South Africa. You could see things there starting to germinate, starting to come together. And, your heart for there, I know Greg's had a heart for there. Peter Haas has had a heart for there. You guys have been
communal thing. They have it now all over Europe. Yeah, like we had when we started this thing. They have that now. Ooh, man, I'm excited about those things.
How do people connect with you? What's the best way to connect with you and your podcast and
my podcast, Relational Leader Podcast? We're
going to do this. We're going to kind of do that together.
Actually, we're going to do a collab on this as well. So people listening to this will get to connect that way. And so. I don't know, just try to create environments for people to get together and talk about real stuff. And
tell me real quick, because this is unscripted, all these questions you didn't know what we're going to answer.
Right.
Just as we wrap up, tell me about your heart for New England.
Well,
and the East Coast.
I do. I have a huge passion for New England. It's cold.
You've been that way for a long time.
A long time. It goes way back to my wife. Like, so Amy was born in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay.
Her mom and dad were married. Her mom's a total New Englander. Her dad's from North Carolina, but he got a job with Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati. They were married. That's where they moved. Amy was 5 years old. They got divorced. And her mom moved back to New England. Okay, is where she was from. And she had been there for a little while, found the Lord while she was there, had a friend named Rana who had a husband named Ernie, set her up on a blind date with a guy named Tom Dunn. They went on a date, fell in love, got married, and then he was from the South and hated the cold, and they moved to Baton Rouge when Amy was seven years old. Like, he should have stayed in New England.
Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge. And so that's where I was raised, and that's what brought Amy down to South Louisiana. Okay, fast forward. Years later, I meet this guy named Derek Fry.
Yeah, man.
At an art conference. Him and his brother-in-law, David Payne. I met both of them. I'm emailing back and forth with Derek. Amy sees on my computer one day an email from a guy named Derek Fry. Where's he from? He's a pastor in New England. Ask him if he knows Ernie Fry. Do you know Ernie Fry? Yeah, that's my dad. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. So I
had no idea.
That's how my passion for New England came to be. Because without that connection, I wouldn't know Amy.
And you've been there 20, 30 times.
Oh, for sure. And I
And
go there.
hosted conferences, connected
Yeah,
with churches,
connecting with
brought
churches.
people together, brought people into art, brought, growing churches. I was talking with a friend of ours, Chris Gepner.
Oh, yeah. Right there in Vermont.
He's in Vermont. We were texting back and forth. And when I got done, I just thought, man, Vermont.
That's a tough
And
area.
then I had a friend of ours that came out to this meeting we did out at Purcell Farms, and he's in Maine.
What's his name?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, you're not going to remember right now. I'm so
not going to
sorry.
remember right now, but, he's in Maine. And it was like, you just sit there and think about that. Man, to God be the glory.
We need to plant some more churches in New England.
Yeah, we are. We are.
Mm-hmm. I know that's a target
we
spot.
just have a few states left. We just planted one in Alaska.
In Alaska, and he was interning with us.
He was interning with you.
Yeah.
And you guys sent videos, man. He sent me a text right after he planted and talked about Bayside. Another intern talked about your impact on his side. They launched, I think, in Anchorage with 140 people.
For sure.
And I believe, Randy, 9 people got saved on the first Sunday. 140 in Anchorage?
That's the biggest thing in all of Alaska. I'm serious.
That's
That's
a big
revival.
deal.
It's a huge
That's
deal.
revival. There's revival in Alaska.
Right.
Well, man, thanks for joining me for Unscripted. It's always fun to be with you.
Dino, I love you, man. Thank you for having me on.
At ARC, relationships are everything. We don't just plant churches, we build life-giving communities that transform cities for the glory of God. With ARC, you're never alone in the journey, and we want to provide practical coaching, resources, financial models that are rooted in generosity, help you plant a church, a large launch church to thrive from day one. If you feel called to plant a church, you want to partner with us to plant more ARC churches, we want to help that. So join a network of more than 1,132 church plants, thousands of partners in the ARC family making a real difference. One community at a time, let's plant more churches. So visit arcchurches.com to learn more. Plant with us, partner with us. Together we can reach more people through the message of Jesus Christ. And it takes existing churches to be sending churches to plant new churches. Let's do it together.